They say children are closer to the in-between, that place before birth and after death. I never believed it. Not until my daughter started talking to someone who wasn't there. It started when she was 3. One afternoon, I heard her giggling in the living room. I peeked in, expecting cartoons, but it was just her and her blocks. She looked up and said, "Pop is so silly." I froze. That was what I used to call my grandfather when I was her age. Not Grandpa, not Paul, just Pop. No one had used that name in years. I hadn't spoken it out loud since he passed away over a decade ago. I asked her what she said. She grinned. Pop made my blocks fall. He sneezed and knocked them over. She mimicked a cartoonish achoo and laughed. I brushed it off. Kids make up imaginary friends all the time. Maybe she heard the name somewhere. But then she kept mentioning him. At nap time, during quiet play. Pop told me not to eat too many cookies. Pop says your favorite color used to be yellow. Pop says you were scared of clowns when you were little. Every time she spoke, it was like a pinprick to my memory. She wasn't guessing. She knew things. One day she asked, "Why don't you have jelly beans in the drawer anymore?" My chest went cold. When I was little, my grandfather kept jelly beans in the 3rd drawer of his desk. He'd sneak me a few before dinner. It was our secret. I never told her about that. No photos, no stories. I started watching her more closely. She'd stop mid-play, tilt her head as if listening, then laugh. Sometimes at night, I passed her room and saw her sitting up, eyes focused on the dark corner of the room. One morning, she looked at me over breakfast and said, "Pop says you didn't want to sell the lake house. He understands now." I hadn't spoken about the lake house in years. We sold it after he passed. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in her room after she dozed off. The air felt heavy. Still, like something unseen was just out of reach. When my daughter was 4, I was sorting through old boxes in the attic. My daughter followed me up. She pulled out a photo, me at 5 years old, sitting on Pop's shoulders. She smiled and said, "He loves that picture. He says you laughed so much that day." I never showed her that photo. It was buried in a box, never digitized. From that day on, she spoke less about Pop, like the connection was fading, or she knew I was listening too closely. One night I asked, "Do you still see him?" She hesitated, then said, "Not as much." A few weeks later, while helping her tie her shoes, she looked up and said softly, "Pop says you're doing a good job being a mom." Then smiled and went back to the laces like it was nothing. She never spoke of him again. I still feel him sometimes, in the stillness, in the warmth of an empty room, in her voice when she says something wise beyond her years. Some say grief leaves a mark. Others say love leaves a door open. I don't know what I believe anymore, but I know she spoke to someone who knew me, and maybe he never really left.